have with us a very eminent panel. Leading this session will be our Joint Secretary from India, who heads the Smart City Mission for India, who will take you through the discussions. In his discussions, he will take you through how India has moved in the front of technology. What is a city? Why is a city smart? How can a city be smart unless there's a true blend of technology with the future cities? So we have a very eminent panel. I would leave it to the session moderator to take this forward. Vikas, over to you.
Thanks, Neja. Good morning, everyone. I hope it's been a good day for all of you and you are going to enjoy the expo. Before I start, I would like to thank JS for joining us out here and Dr. Aisha and all the panelists on the dais. While the topic is pretty well known, smart cities, I think we all talk a lot about it and we all heard about how technology is shaping the way we live in cities, the way we manage our cities. But I believe apart from technology, when we talk about smart, the people and process also takes primacy along with technology. And this is where we are fortunate to have a panel wherein we have people from various walks of life, not only from technology, we have people who have been using this technology intermingled, interpersed with people and processes, the transformation over there to improve our cities, to make these cities more livable and to improve the economy and to make the cities more appealing for each and everyone. So with that, let me first invite our JS, Mr. Kunal Kumar. Mr. Kunal Kumar is a thought leader, he is a meticulous strategist and also a tactical implementer. He has been leading our charge in India of building 100 smart cities as part of our ambitious 100 smart cities program. He has been focusing on creating a roadmap for how Indian cities will be designed, built and managed in the future. He has been using the power of communities, collaborative work and technology to enable creation of connected, livable, energy efficient, adaptive and resilient cities. The three-pronged strategy that Mr. Kunal Kumar brings on board is upscaling economic opportunities, innovation and entrepreneurship, evidence-based policy and decision making, and capacity building of all the stakeholders.
Right.
With that introduction, I would like to hand over to Mr. Kunal Kumar to share his thoughts about how technology is shaping the cities of future, what trends he sees emerging, and also some inputs about what all we have been doing in India. So over to you, sir.
Thank you, Vikas. I'll be very brief. What time have you given me?
15 minutes.
15 minutes. Okay, I'll just time it. So it's 11:05. I'll want to complete by 11:20. We have a very distinguished panel, and I often, remember the words of Steve Jobs when he said, when you get too many smart people in the room, it's better to get away and get out of their way, and I'll get out of their way very soon. But 15 minutes is what I'll consume. It's a very broad topic. Somebody who would have been speaking on the future of cities 3 years back would have been in a different mood than who is speaking now. And that is actually exemplified by some of you might have heard of this urban economist called Edward Gleiser. He's at Harvard. And a few years back, he wrote a book called Triumph of the City. This year, he has written a book called Survival of the City. And you know how difficult it is to predict future of cities. But here I go. I would just want to mention in this slide that we are now living in the century of cities. Again, take it with a pinch of salt, take it with all your wisdom, because we've seen the last few years. But essentially, city building as a activity in itself will probably end this century. By end of this century, we will be 80-85% urban across the world. In whatever ways it is going to be urban, big cities, dense cities, or whatever. I think it will essentially be urban, people will be more connected. That's how it seems to me right now. And 2006 was the first time when we had more urban people in the world. But you see, 1800 it was only 3% urban people in the world. 1900 it was 15%. So this pace has dramatically increased, and we are headed towards a century of cities beyond which probably no city building is going to happen. If you look at India's profile, it's also moving in the similar direction. We are not 50% yet. World is 50% already. World is 54% urban. India is about 35% urban right now. And these percentages really don't, again, you have to take it with a pinch of salt because everybody has a different way of measuring it. If you look at the Mexican way of measuring urban, then India is already 65% urban. If you look at the World Agglomeration Index, which World Bank came out with in 2009, we are already 55% urban. If you go by the Chinese definition, we are already 60% urban. So but the Indian definition puts it 35%. We would also be reaching 50% by 2046 and then beyond. And you see per capita GDP, this is a correlation across the board. More urban you are, more GDP you have. How they are related is a question. We will not probably address that in this discussion, but there is a strong correlation between productivity in a country and its urbanization percentage. India's urban story right now is essentially the way we look at how cities are going about things is essentially a 3-tier strategy. A lot of programs are happening across all the cities of the country, whether it is housing, whether it is about the Clean India mission, you must have heard about it. You have the program on water, program on sewerage and septage, essentially basic services. They are being done across the 4,000 plus cities in the country. Intensified development of infrastructure and services like water, green areas, septage, sewerage, which is basically saturation going 100% right now is happening 500 cities. And they're all cities over 100,000 in population. And as you all know, 100 cities are being developed on the principles of smart cities. So this is the 3-tier strategy, when some for all, few for 500, and very select few are essentially being developed as laboratories which throw up learnings which other cities can consume. So that's what the smart cities mission is about. There are two kinds of inputs into this. One, of course, the smart cities are trying to develop areas. So areas means area-based development, whether it's greenfield, whether it is retrofitted or completely redeveloped after demolishing the old development. Or they are into laying citywide smart solutions. For example, optical fiber. For example, solutions in health, mobility, integrated traffic management, so on. And 100 cities are, as we speak today, engaged in 5,000 plus projects of these kinds. Worth about 28 billion US dollars. And as I was speaking to Ms. Aisha in the just before coming to this conference, why is all this for? Essentially, smart cities, if you see, it's a very interesting journey. I'll come to the point why is it for later, but I'll just start how this journey began. I think there are many drivers, and many of you lead these drivers as industry partners and people who are in this business of creating solutions for storage, for energy storage, data storage, for connectivity. You have seen optical fibers and the way they have. By the way, I think optical fiber, the length of optical fibers is I think more than 100 times the length of national boundaries that we have. So clearly there's a guy called Tarun Khanna who teaches at Harvard. He's written about connectography. He says this is the new the age of connections where national boundaries don't matter as much as many other things. And so transportation systems, globalization, all that happened. And why is this slide here? The companies who are in this business of creating technology were moving closer and closer towards a kind of a boom, which is everything coming together, the perfect storm, storage systems getting cheaper, connectivity getting easier, mobile phones and everything getting accessible even more, globalization happening, people getting connected because of transportation systems. But although all of a sudden what you had was the global financial crisis in 2008, which is when I think most of the private sector industry around these items, around these solutions actually came together to pitch the smart city solution to the governments. Although the word had started to come in before, I think my perspective is the global financial crisis actually pushed a lot of this solutioning into the government, which is when probably the private sector realized that people like Lehman Brothers can go bust one fine night, but governments are here to stay, and therefore it's a smart city could be a good business. I think that was the starting point. And why I come to this slide of a kangaroo being on the picture is, so when the Britishers first landed when Sailor Cook and his men landed in Australia, they actually asked the tribals. They saw this animal there. This was about 40,000 years ago, and they see this animal there, and they ask them, "What is it?" And the tribals say, "Kangaroo, kangaroo." Okay, and the Britishers think it's a kangaroo. Actually, the tribals were saying, "We don't know." But because they're saying we don't know, these guys thought they were telling the name of the animal, which is where I'm coming to this important point in smart cities. Whether it was happening because this perfect storm had come together, whether it was happening because globalization was happening, transportation systems were bringing people together, whether it was happening because the global financial crisis pushed the private sector to the business of smart cities into government, the fact of life is that is what the tribal interpretation was. And now it is the Britishers' interpretation, or the people who are coming and adopting it, they have to make their own, interpretations of what to make of this. And therefore, you see, different countries have different ways of looking at smart cities. If I ask a common man on the streets of Amsterdam, he will say smart cities are cities which use technology for the betterment of lives of people. But when I ask a person in the streets of Jhansi in India, or maybe Mumbai in India, they will say, smart cities are cities which work. I mean, if I have a tap, it should give me water supply. If it is a road, it should give me a convenient space to walk. And if it is a street light, it should function. And if you go to some other place in the globe, you'll have a different definition. Ms. Aisha was telling me in the morning that how the Sheikh here defines, Sheikh Ahmed defines smart cities as cities which actually keep people happy. And people are diverse. People are tourists, people like us, people are citizens, people are businessmen, startups. Everyone has to be happy. So that is the relevance of this slide to this discussion, as to you have to make your meaning of what the tribal is telling you. And essentially the top line is cities which work for their people. This is what we in India believe are smart cities. And we have to make our cities work for our people. People come into cities for many, many different reasons. But whatever the reason they're coming in for, the city should be able to adopt that reason and adapt itself to be able to function in order to, get the benefits that people actually aspire for. There are many matrices which go around saying this is the smartest city. In this particular ranking, this has been the smartest city. But people don't look at smart cities that way, honestly. It's again a governmental way of maybe, and some multinationals who want to relocate employees and stuff like that, look at those rankings. If you ask a person on the ground, he or she will say, well, if I get a aha feeling when I get out of my house, I feel greeted when I look at the city when I come out in the morning and I come back in the night, I feel safe, secured, I feel heard. It's a smart city. So cities which work for their people. And 4 key principles have emerged in the Indian context. I think more from less. So, and this is not only about resource financial optimization. This is much more. This is about actually, this is a philosophy. And this says that you have to impact larger number of lives. You have to impact larger geographies. You have to be able to, look at ways in different ways. It's innovation. We don't have the luxury of trillions of dollars to invest in our smart cities or other cities. But we still need to make our cities work for their people. So therefore, you have to create more from less. Then affordable excellence. And this seems to be an oxymoron in some senses. People think things which are affordable cannot be excellent and vice versa. But I think here the story is, probably the best thing that exemplifies this is the mobile phone. The richest of the rich have mobile phones. The poorest of the poor have mobile phones. It is a device which is affordable, yet an excellent means of communication. Can similar solutions like the mobile phone, what is the mobile phone for housing? What is the mobile phone for transportation? What is the mobile phone for water? These are the kinds of questions that smart cities have to answer. Then, of course, these cities are not only thinking about today, they're thinking about intergenerational equity, they're thinking about tomorrow. It's about sustainability. And above all, coming back, it's community-centric. It's built around people. You and I could be the best in understanding, and PhDs and multiple PhDs and postdocs in ICT, or we could know how to engage with people, political science, sociologists, anthropologists. But we have to be humble in the face of the fact that the community knows what's best for it. And the smart cities are those who actually are built around the aspirations of people. And so it's always important to keep that at the center of your thinking. So technology then becomes a means, a very important means. However, it's not an end in itself. And on top, you see different reasons why in government, in these cities, they are using technology to make government come as a platform. It's the enterprise government solution where typically you don't need to go to multiple offices. You have single window solutions, you have single sign-ons and stuff like that. Then performance measurement. In countries like ours, a lot of valuable money is and competing, multiple sectors are competing for that money, and that is being poured into the urban sector. How is that performing? Efficiency improvement, whether it is water, sanitation, how efficiency can be improved by using technology. And of course, data-driven governance for your climate goals, for your ease of living goals, for ease of doing business goals. Are you moving in the right direction? So you see in the bottom, we're talking about the integrated command and control centers. We're talking about India's data smart cities policy, the data maturity assessment framework, DMAF, and geographical management information systems across the board to measure performance. Then using technology for driving innovation in society. How do you link to startups? How do you actually create connected communities? How do you actually drive economic growth through innovation? So if you see the interventions like City Innovation Exchange, Data Smart Cities again, where we're talking of open data and data exchanges. IUDX is India Open Data Exchange, which actually lets safe and secure exchange happen. We all have learned about, all of you know about UPI, which is creating a revolution in digital payment space. Every month we have more than 3 billion transactions. IDX promises to be the UPI for some senses. So we are acting with many other companies on this. Then cities, we have about different smart cities coming out with many at the end of this bubble. Then this 2022, sorry. Use of technology for enhancement of strategy, smart net, urban platform. How you actually, for example, broadband to every house, every establishment itself is following goals like this, and when it comes to making people happy, when it comes to making cities work for people, technology is a fantastic tool. We have to remember technology is almost like a tiger. If you are riding it, you're on top of it, you're safe, you feel powerful. When you slip, the tiger has its way. And therefore, it's very important on data privacy, data safety issues and stuff. But technology for health, education, and these are the priorities that are emerging from the Indian context. For water, for safety. This on the right side is Prayagraj, where you see a conference of about 200 million people happens in 10 days in the Kumbh Mela. And this is a scene from there, which was managed essentially using all smart city solutions. And of course, mobility. And I come to this slide, which says, we need to have a systems view. Time and again, we struggle with this. But we need to have a systems view of technology, where technology is as horizontal as maybe electricity. And so it cuts across sectors. And therefore, a whole of government approach, an approach where people don't, of course, it's efficient to work in silos, but all government should actually come together at some level, integrate, look at synergies, look at building efficiencies, look at creating solutions which can be in a SOP'd or centralized, and then also look at creating common strategies, and then drive it maybe in a decentralized manner. It's a systems view of approach which needs to be taken. And if you see the kind of market that is emerging in the country now, in India, it's about a 35 billion opportunity, direct investment in tech. and it's very difficult to say where this will go. I mean, probably I wasn't wanting to put this slide here because the way things are shaping, these numbers could go here and there anytime. Technology evolves so swiftly. Innovations in technology happening so swiftly that putting numbers to even 10 years down the line is very difficult. Of course, we need to have the digital and analog combination to work well. Digital largely will come from the industry. Analog components have to come from government, which include regulation, policy, advocacy, infrastructure, so on and so forth. Unless you have that in place, you would not be able to. For example, if you don't have your data laws in place, if you don't have data safety in place, you'll not be really able to make data work for you. And of course, mindful use of technology requires certain concerns to be addressed. Of course, cybersecurity is one, and all of us frankly struggle, and we should really think much more than what we do right now. Appropriate legislation, use of social media, reskilling of the population is essential, because this essentially is leading to a lot of change in the way work is happening in our cities. And opt-in modalities are very essential. Sometimes we make things mandatory, and sometimes that really becomes the point where we falter, and therefore opt-ins have to be the approach. And of course, there's no one size fits all. Vendor-driven approaches more likely to fail. Sometimes vendors come and talk to you saying, well, we have the solution. So the way they come is, your problem is not having the solution I have, which is essentially, the best way to fail. The way you have to approach this is, let me look at your problem closely and then develop a solution for you. That's essentially the way that the industry has to go. And of course, there are broad concerns around use of technology. A digital economy without fundamentally being an open economy, people connected, is not going to work in the long term. Higher productivity without social cohesion is difficult to reach. And community centricity without keeping some critical values like inclusion at the core is very difficult to achieve in a digital world. So these are common concerns, and since this was a starting keynote, I just thought I'll then put them on the table. And I'll end this presentation of mine and leave it to the panel now we're all here to build cities for people. Let's find out ways, whether using technology or otherwise, to do that. Thank you so much.
Could do a better justice when you say smart cities are the cities which make people happy. So thanks for sharing those words from Sheikh bin Mohammed to us. And I think you very well brought out the concept of affordable excellence, because while we need to achieve excellence, but every community, every society needs to be able to afford that. And I would agree, affordability is not only in the sense of resources, it's also in the sense of maturity, how mature we are as a society, how mature we are as people. Can we really absorb the transformation which is coming our way? So I think that matters there also. And also in terms of the innovation, and especially being part of Smart City journey in India, the way Urban Observatory, IUDX have enabled data exchanges, and the way we are able to visualize what all our data coming from city can do for our lives today is really wonderful. So with that, I'll move on to the panel discussion. And in the panel discussion, as I mentioned earlier, we are fortunate to have people who have worked both on technology and on the larger people aspects. Today, when we look at Dubai as a city, I think Dubai is already the city of the future. So while we are talking about what cities of future should look like, Dubai is being called that. Dubai, the larger Emirates, and within that, the way Dubai Pulse is using data to enable each and every aspect of our lives is really remarkable. So over there, I would like to invite Dr. Aisha. Before that, let me introduce her. Dr. Aisha is the Vice Chairman of MR Development Board since 2020. She is a global digital magnate and founder Director General of Smart Dubai in UAE. She holds the distinction of being the first woman and probably the only woman globally who embarked upon a journey to create a smart city without any benchmark to start with. And she actually established those benchmarks. So when Dubai started, there was no model to follow, and Dubai created what is being called as the Dubai model. And Dr. Aisha gets credit for that. She is amongst the she has gone beyond smart cities. She today is seen as a Emirati global ambassador for digitalization, and she is a thought leader for advocating humanization of technology to create better urban smart future. So with that, Dr. Aisha, I would like to seek your perspective on what a smart city is in terms of future. What defines cities of future, and what defines future of cities? What should be our perspective to these two questions?
First of all, I'm delighted to be here with you today at the Indian Pavilion at Dubai Expo 2020. There's no actually better place to be to discuss the future of cities and the perspective of use of technology than the location where we are here today. And this is the first ever global event at this scale and the new normal phase of our life. We are here to contribute to connecting minds and creating the future through sustainability, mobility, and opportunity, which is the motto that drives everyone here at Expo. And I'd like also to thank His Excellency Mr. Kunal for the beautiful presentation. It was like a music into my ears, capturing the essence of developing smart cities, whether it be from a strategic level, but also from a people perspective. And I do believe today India has a great opportunity to take the meaning of smart city to its next level, because you have plenty of use cases. Today you have 5,000 use cases, but I'm sure 2022 and 2023 you will get more and more of these use cases that will touch people life. And for me personally, the future of cities relies on nation strategies, as we said, touching people lives, as cities should always be built to cater for people personal and professional needs today, and also for their future. This defined my strategy during my previous mission for launching Smart Dubai, and I do believe that humanizing the experiences will drive the perspectives we are gathered here today to discuss about. And to be honest, the COVID-19 crisis has intensified the political, economical, and social challenges facing worldwide cities that are trying to shape their smart city strategies, and it pushes us to our next level. Because today what this crisis did for us make us believe more in technology, that it can help us. So people who were denying that technology might affect negatively our lives, today with the crisis we saw amazing solutions that helped us to go through the last 18 months and be here together, at least here in the stage we are without our mask and vaccinated. And I second also the World Economic Forum view that there is no going back in time. Rather, cities will need to rethink their strategies for economic growth, recalibrate their approaches to providing city services, and jumpstart the recovery to build back better and become more livable, sustainable, and resilient, and also affordable. Today, these technologies showed us during the crisis that we should rethink about how do we live our life and how we exchange our experiences and our businesses and many things because of these, the implementation of these infrastructure as technologies. Actually, a few days back, Facebook disrupted the digitalization news arena across the world by renaming its company to Meta. And I'm sure many of you were discussing through WhatsApp group and emails, what's next? What's next with this Meta? A new term that Mark Zuckerberg said symbolizes the fact that there is always more to build. And I was telling Mr. Kunal just before the exhibition, before this conference, that His Highness Sheikh Mohammed always was pushing us whenever we reach a summit, there is another summit we need to think about. And that's exactly what Zuckerberg was telling. There's always more to build. And I've seen it in ground, like what's India been doing in the last 10 years by pushing more and more technologies. There's no end goal there. So for many of us, when we heard Zuckerberg renaming the company, we thought it is a rebranding exercise. But for me and many of, I'm sure of you here also in this room, it's a glimpse of what social media and associated experiences may look like tomorrow. The most important question to ask is how it will influence cities and communities' experiences and services. There won't be any more segregated government platforms and private sector platforms. What he envisioned is that all of us will be living that virtual life. So how we can bring all these platforms together. There is one example of many that technology will evolve by the minute. But what really matter for us as cities and urban leaders, digital transformation experts, is to define how our cities will leverage all of that in securing better, seamless, hassle-free tomorrow for our people. And this is exactly what Mr. Kunal was talking about through his slides. One of the key global initiatives that will contribute, in my opinion, to defining a roadmap of our cities, the Future of Cities initiatives, which was created by WEF to help catalyze public-private collaboration on these matters, while also advancing new frameworks and policy tools for improved planning. Today, technologies are available, but what is more harder are the regulation policies around them, and also the belief of people in using these technologies. And there are also many other examples. If I will go on, we have under the G20 Global Smart Cities Alliances, there is a lot of activities being done. Also, the Global Future Council on Cities of Tomorrow's, the Net Zero Carbon Cities program, the Infrastructure 4.0 that's also coming under the G20. And I encourage all of you to go and tap into these platforms, because we are in a learning cycle in building our cities. We cannot say that I will build it in silos from other cities. We need to know what other cities done and learn from them, tailor it for us and customize it for us. I was always telling my team, there is no shame in copy and paste, but we need to know what we are copying, and we know how to tailor it and customize it for our need and for our people and for our challenges.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Aisha. I agree, no shame in copying and paste, as well as the copy and paste is serving a purpose. Absolutely. So thanks for giving the catchphrase to us. And I think you laid forward a very, very simple but very profound point, that when we start building our cities, we have to look at personal and professional needs of each and every constituent. Maybe a white-collar worker, a blue-collar worker, a taxi driver, a lift operator, a businessman, a tourist. So if we are able to take care of personal and professional needs of each and every one, and share the experience which they have throughout the city, when they get up in the morning, when they look at their bills, what they need to pay, when they look at surrounding around themselves, when they talk about, okay, today I have to go from point A to point B, how would I commute? So how we shape the experience definitely is the city of future. So thank you so much for sharing those thoughts. And on mobility, let me invite Andrea now to talk about a bit about which way mobility is going, because today there are quite complex models in terms of mobility. And especially due to COVID, I think mobility has come into more and more into picture. People are going back to their hometowns, working from there, and they want to come back to cities as when scenario gets better. So mobility also is one of the key ingredients of how economies push the country ahead. So mobility assumes a lot of importance, and we see quite complex models today, a lot of algorithms being used to work out what's the best model over there. So I'm not too sure whether those models today are giving the right kind of picture or not. But before you comment on that, Andrea, let me introduce you to the public the audience out here. Andrea leads the Middle East, India and Africa region of PTV Group, and he works on the mobility and logistics space in the region. His responsibility includes leading company into providing software and mobility service solutions. Before the current assignment Andrea had, he was leading intelligent transport system business line of Ericsson globally. Andrea, over to you.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you for having me here. I'm really pleased to be among such a panel of high-level representatives. As you mentioned, I'm going to take the perspective of cities of the future from mobility angle. So I don't think it's new to anyone that we expect that more or less 70% of the population in 2050 is expected to be living in the urban area. So this is, if we look at the distribution, the world average is around 56%. If we look at India, as far as I get from the sources, is around 36% of the population lives in the urban cities. And while we look at the Americas or North America, it's around 82%. So, I mean, these will put a lot of pressure on the infrastructure, as you mentioned, water, let's say, transportation, safety, all these elements will be under enormous pressure. So if we don't take action today, we will have a sort of gridlock. So mine is a call for action. And I will be analyzing the call for action from a mobility angle. Let me start with transport planning. Transport planning is a key element of the development strategy of, or should be a key element of the development strategy of the city of the future. I mean, mobility itself, like telecommunications, as it was mentioned, has a direct correlation to the GDP growth of the cities, and is an essential need of the people living in the cities. So before it was an infrastructure level telecommunication, now we're moving to mobility and other elements. I mean, not by chance, this is one of the three elements or sub-themes of the Expo 2020, together with sustainability and opportunity. It is, I mean, widely accepted that building extra infrastructure or additional infrastructure will not solve the issue of mobility or the mobility challenges. It's really using the existing infrastructure or building the infrastructure of the future in a smarter and more efficient way. I usually give the example of when you want to lose weight, you don't loosen the belt. I mean, it's not the right way. It doesn't happen like that. You need to control the food intake, the activity. So it's all about discipline. The same is valid for the transport infrastructure. If we build more people will come. So we need to use it smarter in a more efficient way. When we look at cities of the future, another important element, and Vikas was mentioning it before, agencies, government agencies, developers, ministries are definitely in the need of a proper environment or a safe environment to simulate scenarios about the future of their cities. And technology is coming really handy today. There is I mean, in the past it was much more difficult, but transport planning community today is progressively departing from very complex, let's say, resource-intensive strategic transport model. They are realizing that these models, in the end, build a very accurate, or I will say very precise, inaccurate representation of the reality. I mean, this is a breakthrough. This lot of efforts. By the time you finish the effort, you have a representation of the reality that is outdated. So they are moving to a different approach, and here it comes technology at hand. Sensors. I mean, we have always connected sensors. We have abundance of data. There is connectivity, as I said, everywhere. There is almost unlimited processing capacity with cloud computing, and then there is the possibility to use this data for what we call evidence-based transport planning. So start building the plans based on evidence, and these will feed into digital twins. So cities are spending a lot of efforts in building these digital twins based on existing data. This platform, this emerging platform, will provide decision makers with a safe environment to test what-if scenarios. And these scenarios can be tested even before the first brick is laid. I mean, not to praise only Dubai, but I mean, Dubai, we've been here for a long time, but has been using this approach since almost its inception of Road and Transport Authority, just to bring in 2004, when it was before Dubai Municipality and then it turned into Road and Transport Authority. So sensing in open data, which has been mentioned by Mr. Kunal, is really a key element. Open data of the relevant data are a key element of the digital twins, or a key enabler to build digital twins. So cities should focus definitely on enabling the open data layer and to build the basis for a smarter and more efficient use of infrastructure. Cities, as I mentioned, are investing a lot in digital twins. However, it is important to close what we see globally as the plan to execution cycle. Proper planning is not enough if you don't close the loop with the execution. So to build the city of the future, the selected, let's say, evidence-based scenario should be plugged into traffic or transport, real-time transport management systems that are able to predict, again, in real time, the demand for mobility and steer it. The cities of the future, what we see, should be equipped, and this was touched upon again by Mr. Kunal, by traffic management centers that are able to predict and steer the demand for mobility in real time. Then again, the loop, the data produced by these TMCs should be fed back into the planning process, which will be again evidence-based. And this long-term transport planning should be then go back into the real-time traffic management. Technology, and I'm almost done, technology today is enabling cities to do another quantum leap. I'm talking also about the development about machine learning. Machine learning, cloud computing is enabling cities to steer mobility based on city priorities, not on commercial or external Google-like priorities. So to maximize the benefit for the citizens. So to make cities more livable and sustainable. Along with electrical, connected and autonomous vehicle that will give back the time to the travel time that when you talk about mobility as a negative impact is usually considered a negative element of transportation, the time that you spend traveling. With autonomous car, it will become positive. This will allow citizens to get back not only the time, but also claim back the space that is occupied by transportation infrastructure in the city. Last but not least, last element is the what I call the city dashboard and KPIs. Having a proper dashboard that gives the pulse of the city and provides the KPIs to the decision makers to assess how the decisions are going with respect to the objectives is key to take action. With this, I'm done. I think it's really time I repeat myself to take action in order to make the cities of the future livable. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Andrea. Thank you so much. And you talked about sensors, open data, digital twin, technology, turning negative connotation of time spent in traveling into a positive, productive use. But let me now bring a different perspective to what all we've been talking about so far. We've been talking about emerging technologies. We've been talking about what new things can do. But we have amongst ourselves Amr, who believes that before we talk about new emerging technologies, there's a lot that can be done from the existing infrastructure itself. So what are investments we already have made into our cities? How can we use those investments to make it more productive, to make it much more easier for the citizens? And Amr specializes in that. He's the CEO of Cointala Inc. and also a board member. And prior to joining Cointala, Amr was corporate vice president of Cisco, leading Cisco's global public sector business worth $30 million. Amr, over to you, please.
Thank you, Vic. Hello. Thank you, Vikas, and I appreciate the invitation and having me here. I congratulate the Indian government for the amazing pavilion, and I also congratulate the government of Dubai on hosting the best and largest expo ever with the amazing experiences that we witness here. From our perspective, we believe, and I've been involved in smart cities for over 10 years. I started the smart city business in Cisco 10 years ago, And I was always a very keen on telling everybody that cities technology is only an enabler. Smart city deployments do not necessarily have to have technology as the key dependency. Technology is not the only factor of how you implement smart cities. Smart cities have to have social impact, have to have livability impact, have to have happiness, have to have many other aspects that define how people live there in a better life and more livability than in other cities. And when we look at technology specifically being just the enabler, I always say that city officials don't wake up in the morning and they want to buy technology from technology companies. That's not necessarily what they want to do. What they really want to do is they want to achieve objectives and outcomes to their constituents. These outcomes are the values that they want. The values could be cleaner air, clean water, safer environment, safe community, better investment, lower cost of running the infrastructure, and so on and so forth. And these outcomes come into many aspects. So what technology companies have done in the past is unfortunately have built amazing technology, but that they have then given that technology to the city officials and gave them with it the burden of achieving the outcomes they want to achieve. They did not necessarily commit to that. So what we believe is the right way to move forward is to be responsible for the outcome that the city official is trying to achieve, not necessarily for the technology that you're delivering. You don't sell the technology, you solve the customer's problem or the city problem. That's our main driver. Let me give an example. One of the key challenges while doing this is that when city officials inherit that technology, they also have the responsibility of putting an ecosystem around them that can help them do that. They don't necessarily have the expertise, they don't have the budgets, they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the time or resources to be able to do this. When you choose your ecosystem partners that work with you on building and delivering these outcomes, they take responsibility for the technology and they take responsibility for getting the right ecosystem partners in place that will allow you to achieve the objectives that you're looking for. Whether it is business process optimization, whether it is policies that need to be smarter policies than the policies we have already today, or whether it is the infrastructure and the technology, all of that has to be considered and come into play to achieve the outcome, not to just build technology. In one of the cities in Pennsylvania where we have done work, the mayor wanted to deliver broadband access to the poor communities, the opportunity zones in the city. And to deliver broadband was an extremely expensive exercise given the infrastructure readiness. And to do that, we told them we can build for them a very high quality Wi-Fi infrastructure, a simple solution that would give you the same opportunity for broadband access, give the same experience as broadband access. And instead of you having to pay for that because you don't have money to do that, we are gonna change the street lights to LED lights, save you energy, repurpose the savings to pay back the capital that's needed to build the solution you're looking for. So we have monetized alternative assets that the cities have. This is an asset they have. We monetize the alternative asset and we finance the capital needed for them. So we were accountable for the outcome they were looking for. We did not just build technology. Another example, in a city in the Middle East, not too far from here, the city wanted to provide more safety for the students on the buses. So they wanted to monitor the school buses. They wanted to monitor driver behavior. They wanted to ensure that the bus remains on the route defined for the bus. They wanted to make sure that the bus vitals are safe for the children, the temperature inside the bus, the maintenance, and all of that. They also wanted to make sure that the number of kids coming on the bus and off the bus is the same so that there is nobody left behind. All of these things require a lot of technology, a lot of monitoring, a heavy command and control center environment to monitor all the thousands of school buses going around the city. But at the same time, we offer to them the opportunity that, the stop arm of the bus, it's supposed to stop cars. Cars that don't stop are actually violating the law. This is a traffic fine. We monetize through that traffic fine. We share it with the government, and we will be responsible for achieving the objectives that they want to achieve. This is the transformation of how technology companies need to think about these things. We need to think about these things in terms of what is the objective I'm trying to achieve. Forget the technology I'm using. That's only an enabler for the ultimate objective. Last but not least, and I believe many of my previous speakers have said before, the time is now. The problem keeps on getting compounded, it's getting snowballed, it gets more complicated. There has to be a starting point at some point in order for us to achieve the objectives. The urbanization numbers, the number of people, the number of schools, people are getting richer as well because there's more money being printed around the world. So people spend more money, buy more stuff, they want more logistics, more trucks, more drivers, more borders, more customs. So it just keeps on getting more and more complicated. And in order for us, we have to start, and we have to start today, and we have to leverage, the available resources to be able to deliver the objectives. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you so much. And I think very interesting example of monetizing alternate assets, because we all are investing a lot into smart cities, lot of infrastructure being built up, lot of technology is being procured, invested upon, and ultimately there has to be an ROI in the long term to sustain these measures. So thanks for highlighting that. Also, I agree, ecosystem is of a very, very high importance, because no one company or no one player alone can put a smart city together. Multiple of us need to work together, come together to create platforms of future. And also, I like the idea of accountability for outcome. So while you may think about that, yes, we want to achieve something, but ultimately what comes out is what one needs to be accountable for. So thanks for sharing those thoughts. And with that, let me invite Ashish to share some thoughts on another very interesting aspect about how do you use all this data, all these technologies, all these IoTs towards creating sustainable cities. So we've been talking about mobility, we have talked about technology investments, we have talked about how more can be done from the less, but what about sustainability? Let's hear from Ashish. Ashish is a GM with Wipro. He leads the IoT division. He has been in the field of technology for more than 27 years now. And I think he knows right from I to T of IoT and everything that comes in between. So Ashish, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Vikas. Thanks, Vikas, for introduction. And I would like to thank for being part of this eminent panel. And frankly speaking, while walking into India Pavilion, I was amazed the way it is put up, the way theme is thought of and presented. Coming back to the topic, while we have been discussing about smart city, I would say from a technology company perspective, we have been discussing things only and only around technology. While it has to be thought as PPT, not power implementation, but process, people and technology. We bring all these things together from a people perspective is what makes things much more sustainable. And sustainability is not only about putting something about utilities or putting something about say certain technology elements, but ensuring that we have the way of living aligned in such a way so that we are moving towards net zero. To take an example, if we take water as the sector, complete life cycle management is important. Water metering has been a talk of the town for years. Many cities across the world and most of the cities in India have taken that as a key project. But how do we ensure that potable water is available to the last person? And this whole process is done in such a way so that there is no leakage. Minimum human intervention. So there's an automation of valves, of all the elements which come on the way while transporting this water from the water bodies to the final destination or to the home. And that is where IoT plays a significant role. While we talk about ecosystem play, this is all about putting these technologies together with communication, which is an important element when we make IoT a success, and the kind of communication which is required in terms of wired, wireless, and variety of wireless mix. We are moving into the era where we are getting new technologies in place, including 5G, including NB-IoT, LoRa, and so many other options, where we can think in that direction to solve the problems. And as Mr. Kunal Kumar said, that there has to be a solution to the problem, not to find a problem for the solution. And that journey is already on. And that's where we are looking at sustainability aspects, whether in mobility or in utility, water, power, or we look at the waste life cycle management. And when we talk about water, it's not only the potable water, also the wastewater life cycle is important, because that impacts environment big time if it's not managed well. So use of technology from one end to the other end in such a way so that it is integrated, seamless, affordable, and finally mobile for everyone. How do we ensure that it touches each and every citizen on the mode of communication he understands or he afford? Going back to the mobile example, so while we talk about mobile application in the cities as a big thing, but do everyone has smartphones? No. But do we believe that most of the people have smartphone, at least one in a family, if not all? That's almost true now. How do city management, governance, and technology providers communicate and connect with these people? Should not be limited to mobile apps. It should not be limited to portals. It should be SMS integration. It should be social media integration. And social media there plays a significant role. And as Facebook is changing, we need to change rest of the technologies to understand these mode of communications and then reach out to the last person. These all are good thing to talk about from technology standpoint, but how do we interface and interact with people to educate them, to make them aware that they are part of the process to make cities sustainable is an important aspect. And that's where these communication plays the final and significant role. Thanks, Vikas.
Thanks, Ashish. I have one more question for you. In terms of when you start using IoTs in cities, it's very difficult to start experimenting in a live city, a city which is thriving, which has people moving around, which has water flowing into it, which has power cables. So how do you use a city digital twin in a proactive manner? So is there something new which you guys are doing on using a digital twin for city, creating a city twin, and then experimenting on top of that before we go on to the actual city?
So Andrea already spoke about digital twin a bit, but frankly, digital twin is reality and is future both. The way we need to look at it depends on various building blocks, how they are put together. And it is about not just presenting it as a 3D model. It is about putting the real problems onto the digital arena. Using IoT as an effective mode in these 3D models. And working on these twins proactively to assess what can happen, or to have those models in place which can give you proactive preparation for the various problems. Because we can have various extrapolation as we move, and the way dynamics are changing, whether it is in terms of the city population or it is in terms of the mix of population, the kind of modes which are happening, the kind of technologies which are coming. We cannot wait for these things to hit us and then we try and find out solution. These models need to have a proper simulation option to extrapolate, to simulate overall things in such a way so that we can plan for future. We can put up the technology and process together in such a way so that things work, and things work seamless with maximum amount of automation. Now, automation is not only about part of the technology. Automation is also about bringing people and technology together. And that is where the preemption of things is important. Now, city twin, while it can be used for the utilities, it can be used for mobility. Asset management is another aspect over there, because city assets are growing and will keep growing as the technology elements across segments are growing. How do we manage these assets effectively and make the cost of operation optimal? Because when a city commissioner or the city governance people look at the things, for them, these technologies given to them as such as a tool creates a problem if they have to find an expert for everything. And getting expert in the smaller cities is even bigger problem. Metros can always afford. New York can afford, Delhi can afford, Mumbai can afford. But can smaller towns who also need these technologies, who also need these processes, afford it? Not only from cost perspective, but in terms of keeping these skills with them locally. Probably not. Because that's the nature of technology people. They keep moving towards larger and larger cities for better and better the prospects. So getting L3 and L4 skills is not practically possible in these towns. So how do we automate and make things more remote working? And that is what city twins can bring further.
Yep.
And learning of one city can be applied to other cities. There can be a centralized country level model. There can be centralized geo level model, a continent level model, because some similarities are there. Well, every city is unique. Every community is unique, but there are certain similarities. How do we pick the right ones and apply that?
Sure. Thanks, Ashish. I agree. City twinning probably is a way to reach out to more cities and to do, rather than disrupting the normal life, how do we do experimentation on a near live model and then start replicating solutions across. Also, in terms of what you initially mentioned, using IoTs for net zero, I'm sure we all would agree and be aware that today, even if you talk about water network, the major cost of running a water network comes from electricity, because the power being consumed by the pump, the maintenance cost, the breakdown cost. So if we are able to use IoT sensors effectively over there, definitely leads us to much more sustainable city. With that, let me invite Afzal from Siemens. Afzal is Vice President of IoT and Technology and Innovation at Siemens in UAE. He also leads the MindSphere Smart City Application Center and Command Control Team for Expo 2020. Prior to that, he has been the Head of Business Development and Innovation and Strategy in the Lower Gulf region for Siemens for building technologies for 20 plus years. So moving from building technologies into full-fledged smart cities. So Afzal, what has been your experience on ground? We have heard multiple ideas. We heard about IoTs, we have heard about mobility, we heard about doing more from existing infrastructure, we have heard about happiness, what happiness means, and we also heard about, as Mr. Kunal Kumar said, smart city has its own definition for each and every person, and probably depending on what their needs are. And then we heard about sustainability. So with all this background, what has been your experience when it comes to putting things on the ground? As Siemens, the solutions that you have been having, how those solutions have worked and have not worked, what are the learnings from there?
Thank you, Vikas. Can you hear me? Yeah. Hi. Warm greetings, Her Excellency Dr. Aisha, Mr. Kumar, and my esteemed panelists here, and everyone who's attending this. Congratulations to Indian Pavilion for putting up an amazing pavilion which connects with India, talks about technology, art, culture, and everything. And I also want to congratulate the leadership of Dubai. They not only aspire to create a most connected expo, but if you look at, it's an amazing thing to see the technology, architecture, and the rest of the things which are happening in Expo. And being part of this journey, as Siemens, we are the infrastructure digitalization premier partner for Expo. So proud of what's been achieved here. And touching on my esteemed panelists, what they have talked about, whenever we talk about IoT or a smart city, it is actually a broader thing. And maybe I'll take a broader view because Siemens touches multiple verticals and we are into horizontal. I'll not focus on one particular vertical. Just want to step back a bit. we in Siemens, we always think of technology with purpose. What are we serving? What's the need? And Mr. Kunal talked about what are we doing for the residents? What is the excellence we want to bring? What is the feedback we get from them, right? It's an experience. So this experience is all about what are we doing in every single city. There's always a learning, we can adapt. But I tend to disagree saying that one size fits all. We can have a learning, but you need to look at your own challenges, what that city has, and you need to adapt your solutions. Here, when we talk about technology, solutions, and my co-panelists, Ashish touched on it, and Andre touched on the mobility. I have few things to share with you. When we look at the technology spectrum itself, right, there's a lot there, but we need to make sure that we need to get the right technology and the ecosystem to serve that purpose. Identification of that is a challenge by itself, right? I also want to talk about the topic where we talk about command and control centers, bringing the situational awareness, bringing the data, making it ease how to understand the data with not many experts in the room. It's not easily done. We see many command and control centers, they're good for visualization of data, but you're not able to derive the value of data because the purpose is lost in the translation. And I can say that I have moved to Dubai in 2003 from India, where I come from city Hyderabad. But if you look at, right, I've been involved in amazing projects. It's been more than a decade in smart cities and 2 decades in critical infrastructure command and control center. It's all about the aspiration, what you want to do, cause, right? And then bring the right element of technology and the eco partnership. If you look at Expo itself is an amazing example, right? We have partners from different segments taking care of technology and contributing to the success of Expo. So here as Siemens, I want to touch on few topics. One, I want to build upon what Ashish has said, talking about the water, wastewater infrastructure. Yorkshire in UK, one of the I would say cities, we have collaborated with academia, right? We're talking about Sheffield University. The challenge was, the wastewater was getting blocked, and cities were getting flooded, and rivers were also polluted. How do we avoid this? So we have created a solution. Actually, just you can see in few months, looking at the challenge. How do we predict the under sewage blockers and see, okay, like 2 weeks of forecasting we can do in advance, saying that how many such blockers are there, and how do we actually avoid this water and wastewater getting polluting our rivers, right? So this was an amazing thing, and now we are scaling up this solution to different cities in different parts of the world. Similarly, here in Dubai, we did the Dubai Police Command and Control Center as Siemens. So we are monitoring the city of Dubai, where we are bringing not only the physical security. This is an amazing example what Dubai has adapted. Even though police is responsible for life and safety, it went beyond. It also touches the health and safety of people here. So it's all about getting the data from different systems, normalizing the data, making it available for a variety of stakeholders, and easy to understand. We as, I would say in Siemens here for Expo, I want to touch on what we have done because we are here. I don't want to lose the opportunity. Touching on the digital twin, what Ashish has mentioned. So Expo, we are talking about double the size of Monaco site, if you look at, more than 130 plus buildings. It's a great achievement. More than 120 plus buildings have been LEED certified, if you look at sustainability topic, of which 103 buildings are almost like gold LEED certified, 7 are platinum certified, and you're talking about 8 excellent certificates for the entire infrastructure for SQL. So this is a testimony of sustainability, what you build, how do you take it forward, how you make it greener. Last but not the least, emphasis was about how do you create this circular economy? How do we actually divert the waste from the landfill? Because if you just dump it, you're not recycling. So you're looking at all these things. These are the KPIs, and how do we do it? We have sensors where we need to add sensors. We have technology which gives us the data. I would say situational awareness in terms of taking actions where needed. And if you look at the safety, you might have noticed already, I don't know which gate you all entered today, it's an airport-like security if you come into Expo. So safety, security, comfort, and resilience. These were the foundation, I would say, put in for this particular project. And this is how you can see Dubai is also inspiring the world. How do you create the blueprint for future smart cities? So this has been an amazing journey for us. I also want to touch on one brief topic where everyone talks about technology. I like, Kunal, what you have said. It's an ecosystem. Not one company can do it. And companies should never push the box moving things like I have a technology, you take it. The power of ecosystem goes much beyond than the technology itself. And here, I want to talk about what we have done with RTA here, where RTA was looking for a multimodal solution, where they want to have data for the residents here on the fingertips with an app where you can decide your journey based on where you're starting. So it's a Sahel is an app which is developed by RTA in Dubai, where residents can plan what you want to take from your day. You want to take a metro, taxi, marine, or whatever, right? Which gives all the information. And this is where the government has facilitated the data orchestration, where you can leverage this. Yeah. I know I've been touching various topics because I know I'm not confusing people, hopefully. But like I've said, we have broad topics to connect and mention. Last thing I want to also say that we're also working closely with Department of Transport here, where we are also looking at how do we simulate the traffic patterns and create the future infrastructure which is needed. Cities of the future have to deal with what we call it like, roughly every week. We're talking about 3 million people are moving into these cities. It's a rapid urbanizations. So if you look at this urbanization, brings a lot of challenges on city operators. So we are talking about having a single pane of glass. I want to also touch on what Ashish has said, bringing the data from different systems. Transform that, make it easy to understand, let the city operators or different stakeholders make use of it. IoT already does that. IoT is accelerating the journey, but there is one caveat I want to leave it here. If you look at more than 67% of the projects in digital transformation have failed today. That's a fact. Why? Because we are looking at technology, not the purpose. And this is where user journey is very important. What are you trying to solve is important. And this is where I also want to request everyone here to look at make versus buy, because this is where the proven solutions like Her Excellency Dr. Aisha has mentioned, our city has adapted to certain things. Look at it, see what you can do in your own city, connect with your own challenge, and adapt it accordingly. With that, thank you, Ashish.
Thanks, Avzat. And very well said, purpose should lead, not technology. Dog can wag the tail, it can't be the other way around. So point very well taken. And sorry, I'm stopping discussion a bit because I understand Mr. Kunal Kumar has to step out for some time. So is there any question for Mr. Kunal Kumar? Otherwise, I have something which I want to ask him, and I'll use this opportunity. But I first would like to invite the audience if anyone would like to ask any question. Okay, so let me do that. Let me satiate my curiosity. So, not sure how many of us know Mr. Kumar used to be an executioner before he came into policy and program making role. So he was the commissioner for municipal city, IT hub in the western part of India. And another aspect on smart city. So while we are investing a lot in technology, we're investing a lot in sensors, into infrastructure. I believe a parallel silent revolution is being spearheaded by him in terms of bringing the software elements together. So when we talk about National Urban Innovation Hub, when we talk about NULP, when you talk about National Urban Development Mission, when we talk about citizen-centric smart governance. So I see a lot of things happening in parallel. On one part, hardcore infra, technology, sensors. On another part, the software aspects. So Mr. Kunal Kumar, how do you see these things converging going forward, the interdependencies? And also the idea which you have about cities hand-holding each other, the peer learning through NULP. How does this all fit in together? Isn't it something which is happening too much at too fast a pace?
Because I think there's nothing which can be too much in the scale of India. That's there. See, uh, we can use technology provided the person who is using it is driven to solve a problem. So if I'm not driven to solve a problem, if my role as a city leader doesn't make me accountable enough to be pushed to solve a problem, I wouldn't really be using that technology even if it is available to me, let's say free of cost without any hassle. Which is where a lot of the work that we're trying to do on capacity building, on creating structural reforms and creating more accountable organizations is important. Because if you have accountable organizations, then an accountable person will be driven. It's like you can make the horse drink the water, but you have to get the horse to the water first. So that's the work on the accountability side, which is the National Urban Innovation Program and a program that is and the other programs which are focused on governance. Then there is a big part of our program which is based on outcome orientation.
Yeah.
You know, so again the same thing that I talked about. Unless we first have our goals right, it is very easy. I think technology. All of us have made a point. Everyone said technology is not the big problem now. Technology, all kinds of technologies are available. You go to a new meeting, at a drop of a hat, a new technology is mentioned. But the problem is in understanding what goals you're trying to solve and being able to chase them in the right way. So if you're, let's say, trying to solve for being a more sustainable city, it's a huge, complex governance problem in the first place in itself, than only the use of technology to bring sustainability in the city. It is about different parts of the government talking to each other, about aligning towards common goals, about recognizing the fact that they will have to share data with each other, about recognizing the fact that they will have to come on a common platform to discuss these issues with multiple stakeholders. So being able to connect to the private sector, being able to connect to society is important. Those skills, unless they are built, technology itself will not be able to solve the problem. So about how do you get this outcome orientation in a multi-sectoral, in a multi stakeholder kind of a situation, requires a lot of these software elements which are talking about, requires governance reforms, requires capacity infusion, requires skills to connect with people to make things more accountable, and then you on top of it start to use technology to solve the problems, and then everything comes together, which is what we are trying to do. And therefore you see these different parts of it, but at the end of the day, if you see the integrated approach is to be able to create a system with or without technology, using all, and technology, by the way, in fact governance is also a technology. In fact, the way we came up to this hall is a technology. Technology is a way of doing things. In the larger sense, car is I think the one technology which has shaped our cities today the most is the car. And so we don't associate car with technology. We always think digital is the only technology. So all kinds of technologies, whether it is governance, partnerships, accountability, important goals, everything that we're trying to do have to come together. Only then we will be able to make sense of, only then we will be able to do justice to this important phase of humanity's existence in this 21st century, which is where, and India's role is very important because America's population is 300 million roughly, and that is the population which will move into India's cities over the next 2 or 3 decades. So imagine the kind of influence India's urbanization is going to have on the entire globe, which is where we need to work on all these things together to make it work. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. I think your final point about the impact of what we are doing in India would have on globe is very well taken, and I can share an example. When I started working with EY almost 7 years back, and when I used to talk about smart cities, the way we are doing things in India, my Middle East counterparts here, the partners, would say, no, what you're talking is not smart, that's basic infrastructure. And this is where you are. But today, when I talk about IUDX, when I talk about how we are using data as a currency, then they say, yes, now come and talk to us. And this is something which we want to learn. We want to see how do you build platform of platforms, how do you create data points, and these data points feeding into each and every aspect, and then how do you start managing a city basis that. So I agree, and given the population, the size we have, and I think given the aspirations we have in terms of 100 smart cities, I think by the time we are doing things going forward, we'll have a lot of lessons to share around the rest of the world. So thank you so much. Thanks. Shall I continue? Yeah.
I think see, I was not part of the panel. We can take this offline. Maybe the panelists need to be given more space here. I am the encroacher here. I have to move out to the media briefing. I said.
Thank you. Would like to invite. So would like to invite thoughts from JVS Ramakrishna. JVS is the CTO for Smart Cities and Head of Strategy with L&T Smart World and Water. JVS also used to head Hyderabad Metro in the past. And I have got a huge resume of JVS talking about IoT, AI, digital, big data. So I think I'm not qualified enough to read the entire stuff. Would like to drop on JVS experience about when you put actually pen to the paper, when you actually go to the ground. So it's good to talk about all the elements we have talked about, but when you actually start implementing, what has been your experience over there, and how do you see lives have changed for the citizens? When you move around the city, which you are building up, wherein you are taking up a design and putting those technology together, what transformation has happened over there, and how was that brought upon?
Yeah, thank you. Because good afternoon to everyone, and first of all, thank you organizers for giving this opportunity to share the dais here. I represent Larsen & Toubro, which is predominantly known as infrastructure engineering technology company. And we got into the smart cities business around 6 years ago when the whole mission started. Incidentally, when Mr. Kunal Kumar was actually heading the Pune smart city, that's how we started the journey. We have come a long way. Before we really go into the specifics of how it has benefited, I would also like to share the challenges that we faced, because India has taken this fantastic approach of integrated smart cities view, unlike many cities in the world which were actually focusing on digital interventions into the specific sectors. What that brought in is two important things. One, the priorities were taken from the citizens before arriving at what actually is required for the city. Number one, could be infrastructure, could be technology, could be software elements and all. The second important thing India has done very successfully is actually bringing in, not really going by return of investment mode, but looking for integrated command centers, which will bring in the multi-stakeholder convergence into one place, primarily to improve the quality of life in all facets of the citizens living in the country, but and also bringing in good amount of empowerment to the field officers who run the city. I think these are two important things that actually have helped while actually putting in this whole smart cities. So we were fortunate enough to get into this business, and currently we run more almost around 25 command centers in the city, touching close to 150 million urban lives on a daily basis. What do? We actually work with the ecosystem to bring the solutions, put in, and then run the whole smart city operations, to bring in this improvement in the quality of life. Now there are many challenges in this. Being what in a typical public sector procurement, you take a capital purchases view, so you bring in everything together. And then we came in and said, okay, look, I put in the cameras, I put in everything, what next? Really doesn't make sense. That's where actually the rubber hits the road, and then see, look, it doesn't work like that. So it is a journey from then onwards. The journey is has been very exciting. At the same time, it has got also its own challenges from the perspective of, are the operators or the city administrators, are they geared up to adopt these technologies? That's where the capacity building coming from the government has become very, very important role, which has taken its own time to really take a shape. That was a very important thing that was happening on the ground. The second challenge we had was multi-agency coordination. How do we get in multi-agency coordination? Technology is fine, solutions are there, IoT is there. There is a system integrator like us, come and put in, stitch everything, but who do use it? There is a lot of data that is being generated. It is really making sense. But who would really make sense of this data to act upon that? I think it's been a big change management that has actually ever been taken up, and it's still an ongoing process to really bring in multiple stakeholders together. India has got this beautiful way of creating a special purpose vehicles for every city, separating out from the typical municipal operations. But the thing is, these special purpose vehicles brought in multiple stakeholders together. But really, did did it happen just because we created a special purpose vehicle? No. Now we need to really work through bringing all these officials together, make them talk to each other. So there's a bigger framework of multi-agency operations, which actually had got policy interventions, then process interventions, and then of course technology is always there to bring in a common mayoral dashboard or a city dashboard for situational awareness. The third thing that we have learned is during this having this multi-agency coordination at the process level, the biggest challenge was on the execution. There was no cookie cutter mechanism to put in these sensors, connect them for every city. Every city has got different ways of working, different challenges on the ground, especially in the country like India, where where there are multiple levels of governance happening at the city level, state level, and at the central federal level. So there were quite a bit of challenges to really overcome. After you do all these things, that's when actually you have few sensors focusing on safety, mobility, maybe utilities, maybe governance, e-governance sort of thing, and all those things converging together. This actually has really helped us to really bring in a basic infrastructure for the agencies to start talking together, which we thought is the first step towards to become a smart city. Now, coming back to the real utilities, what we have noticed is generally in any emergency day, multi-agencies work together in a very smart way. But when it comes to a normal day, we find it very difficult to make these systems work together. I mean, that's been the life how cities work. But what I should also say is that this actually is helping now people to talk to each other, bringing in the processes, tie up with each other, and use some of these advanced technologies. Could be in terms of IoT or vision, AI, and so on and so forth, to bringing in. The other one which we have seen, one of the best practices is once the multi-agencies are starting together, there is a good amount of leverage of convergence of or sharing the infrastructure, wherein the municipality is sharing with the police or some other division. I think that is yielding a real good amount of results instead of duplicating the same infrastructure by multiple agencies. I think that's another one. This command centers are actually really benefiting. Now, from coming back to how it has really helped the people, number one, on the law and order, it has definitely helped to bring in good amount of public order management, especially in the traffic or in the during the pandemic times. I know some of the cities actually have really leveraged these command centers which were readily available during the pandemic management, especially talking to the people who are under quarantining before the country has come up with a common app sort of thing. So people were able to trace the infected people. They were able to provide them support and then support them throughout. The second one, from the public order management, during initial days of the pandemic, there was a requirement to restrict people movement from their houses. How could it be done normally? I mean, it's very difficult to do that. So overnight, some of the cities actually have adopted AI technologies, using some of the shared infrastructure like cameras of municipality, as well as the traffic, as well as law and order, to put in some sort of deterrent for the people to not to go beyond certain limits. I think all these things have really helped because there was the infrastructure available. The use cases started actually emanating. I should also tell you that Afzal was talking about Hyderabad, and Andy was talking about PTV. Actually, Hyderabad actually uses PTV product to do the traffic simulation, and then they've been doing very successfully in terms of the traffic management. But what actually is the learning, it's what we would continuously work with the cities is, can we bring in the technology aspect during the planning stage? I think that's been the biggest issue that we've been facing. Yes, there is an infrastructure, there is a convergence, there is a policy, there is a process. The moment technology aspects come into the planning stage, I think that will yield a lot more benefits what we are. And some of the use cases like Dr. Asha was talking about, the copy paste works well. Copy paste special actually works well. I mean, very importantly, the reason is I'll give share an example. We were Mr. Kunal Kumar was talking about the Kumbh Mela, the place where people 250 million people take dip in the river during this short span of time. We were actually doing the crowd management using Vision. We talked to the ecosystem and brought in some algorithm done in Singapore, and it didn't really work with the population over there. So really we have to do a paste special in terms of retraining, reworking on the application, really bring it to the stage where it really is applicable to the local conditions. So what actually how it is benefiting is not one size fits all. Every city has got different needs. So what we have been doing is working well now. It's after the capital works phase. I think everybody, most of the technology work very closely with this to really bring innovation in terms of solving these specific problems. Could be a small problem without much of capital, or very complex something like I was just talking about 5G infrastructure and all. That's what it is helping. Thank you.
Sorry. Thanks, JVS. Thanks for highlighting the challenges on the ground. And yes, I have seen a couple of examples in India wherein infrastructure has been shared in a very innovative and beautiful manner. So we've got City Operations Center being used by city authorities, co-housed, and being used by law enforcement agencies as a command control center also. So repurposing or multi-purposing of same facilities, same sensors, same technology. Also, as Dr. Aisha said initially, COVID actually has forced us out of our shells to think what all can we do with technology that exists with us. Probably we had become a bit lethargic. We had built huge technology apparatus for ourselves, but we were not using it optimally. But COVID pushed us to use that optimally and to use it beyond what we thought it would be used for. So I think we got another 15 minutes. I'll do a quick round for each panelist, and let me start with Ashish, because we were talking about distress management or COVID management. Ashish, you were talking about a concept about unified distress management center or unified distress management call for a citizen. So wherein everything is managed from a single perspective. So just 2 minutes, please.
Yes, so because yes, so while we have crisis management and distress management and disaster management, various independent systems in place. So there is centralized accident and trauma system, which takes care of the accident reporting and then managing those accidents, ambulance routing and all that. We do have disaster management solutions, which takes care of the flood or the various other kinds of disaster, preempting them, planning activities. We do have solutions on, say, people health monitoring. But what is important from a city standpoint is how do we have integrated view? How do we have one call button or the one point solution for the citizens which can take care of them in any crisis? That crisis can be the health issue, the crisis can be a burglary, a crisis can be the on-road accident, can be some natural calamity hitting a specific area. So like many cities in the world do have localized flooding because of the poor clearance of water during heavy rains. All these need to be put up as a single endpoint solution. Now at backend there can be many, but how do we have that single interface for the citizen? Otherwise, finding the solution for the citizen is a major challenge. And that's what I was talking about, which we are working with certain cities already. They have invested in few technologies in past, but how do we bridge that and bring an incremental element to ensure that citizen has one point of contact? And that one point of contact is in multiple ways. It's not limited to, say, calling a call center. It is the way they want, the way they can.
Thank you, Ashish. Azal, I'll invite you here, this is your experience, on what Ashish just mentioned. So while we do have calls like 911 and other things, but it's about going much more holistic, much more integrated manner. It's about personal health versus safety and security, everything combined together. Anything comes to your mind? This is your experience.
Yeah, actually, we have a living example, Dubai, right?
Yep.
You know, we have that. Here, what Ashish has touched. Literally, we're doing all of that in Dubai Police Command and Control Center, right from the burglar alarm system to calling your ambulance, non-critical calls, or monitoring the city, monitoring the beaches, malls, you name it, or reaching out to residents who are in distress, you know, who need some help. For example, there's a Pink Heart program where Dubai Police is actually monitoring the residents who have certain special needs, wherein if they need something, they can press the panic brake with the help of a sensor. Um, you're informing the hospital very in advance to prepare for the patient so that they take care, you know, adequately. So a similar thing, if you get a chance, I would say please do visit the command and control center in Expo itself, where you can see multi-stakeholders are already actually managing this, right from the police, civil defense, transport authority to you name other agencies who need some data to help and manage this entire Expo project safe and secure. So there are a lot more cases globally, but I thought I want to relate it to Dubai because it's a good opportunity to talk about what we have done here. And there are a lot many use cases elsewhere. Because if I may, I just want to add something more because I could not touch on my previous topic. Every time everyone feels like AI is a vehicle, it's a magic wand, it can solve the problems. But I want to also take it with a grain of salt. Here, AI is a tool. You need people with that data science experience, plus domain knowledge. The key ingredient is domain knowledge. If you don't have the domain knowledge, the data is as good as what you train. So I want to say cities can really leverage this, and I know Andre has touched on the mobility topic, and other panelists like Amr and JV touched on it. So we are already experienced the AI in Dubai. Maybe Her Excellency Dr. Aisha will touch on that. What we have done in the recent past during the peak of COVID. So it's all about having that nice blend with the purpose to solve the challenges of today and future.
Thanks, Afzal. For me, AI more than artificial, I believe it's more about augmented intelligence or additional intelligence, because whatever we are doing, we can't trust to machines altogether because the algorithms are still being refined, bias still being taken out. So I think it's more about how do we augment what we are doing by help of systems and machines. And with that, inviting a quick comment from Amr, because Amr, you sent a note to me in which you mentioned cities must act now. What is that now? And Andre would request your inputs also on that. What's that now for mobility? So over to you, Amr, first. Cities must act now.
Thank you. I hope they must act now on the air conditioning because it's freezing. When we talk about cities must act now, I spend a lot of time talking to city officials and authorities about the challenges they have today, and I mentioned many in my earlier talk that the problems keep on, or the challenges they face keep on getting compounded. They keep on becoming more complex. Some of the opportunities keep on going away. We talked about technologies that are coming up, 5G, Wi-Fi 6, different types of technologies. Waiting for the next big thing to do the right thing is never going to happen. You got to start now. You got to start somewhere. And you got to start being also able to build a future-proof technology, because technology is, again, only the enabler and the tool that gets you to whatever you're looking for. So get the right policies in place, get the right processes in place, get the right talent in place, resources, ecosystem, and partners. And then the technology will come, and then the technology needs to be able to keep up with future changes and evolution of what technology is.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy with the long laundry list you mentioned, because that means they would need consultants, and my profession is safe over there. So thanks for highlighting that. Andre, what's the now of mobility?
It's clear, and several people mentioned from several panelists mentioned that cities will be put under a lot of stress, pressure from the urbanization trend. And if you look at the transport infrastructure, it's clear that either you start planning now what will happen in the next, and the infrastructure cycle is very long. It's 5+ years.
Yep.
So if you need to modify the infrastructure, it takes 5+ years. One. Second, the transport infrastructure is probably one of the most expensive assets of cities. So what I mean by now is that you need to look already at what will happen 5 years down the road and start taking educated decisions. It's not about technology, it's really about process, mindset, approaching the challenges today, start planning in advance, and start steering. The way people use mobility infrastructure or transport infrastructure, the way you start steering the mobility demand for the purpose of the city, not or the citizen, sorry. So
Sure.
that's the now.
Thank you. I think point very well taken. It takes long to build it up, so we have to start building it now to cater to the future. Dr. Aisha, I'll come back to the point which you highlighted, and a very sound point about catering to personal and professional needs of each and every one. So we have discussed a lot of things today. We have discussed some case studies. We have talked about technology, people, transformation, as Ashish said, PPT, and multiple things. To your opinion and in your experience, what impact it has created for the residents? So whatever infrastructure investments, digital investments have been done in the city of Dubai, how do people feel about that?
In the UAE, our focus was on emerging technologies, but is how we focus our effort in building the future of UAE based on forward-looking vision. And that adapts the global trends and developments and support also the brightest young minds to come and help us also in designing these new solutions, and to encourage innovation and creativity, and making Dubai the platform that any innovation idea can come and implement it here. So we are proud, alhamdulillah, in UAE that it has been among the front runners globally to promote, as you said, the artificial intelligence, and we have the first AI minister in UAE.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. So as our leadership sees that this technology as a backbone for the UAE future strategy, and it is development journey for the next 50 years. So His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, the Prime Minister, the Vice President and the Prime Minister of UAE and the ruler of Dubai, said that AI will not be used only to improve government services, but also to improve people's lives in the country. We want the UAE to be partner of choice for technology firms and AI talents from around the world. We want the UAE to be the best in the world in developing this futuristic sector and investing in it. So the UAE has, alhamdulillah, long led the region in terms of embracing and deploying emerging technologies, not only necessarily the AI, across the nation. And in my previous role as Director General of Smart Dubai, I was so lucky and honored, alhamdulillah, to be entrusted to establish from scratch the first smart city in the region, and I would say even globally, when the trend was just at its beginning. And as you said, I'm the first lady, and this always surprises my colleagues whenever I travel. Like, do women work in ICT sector in your region? Alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
I think more than 70% of the graduates from science, mathematics, and technology in UAE are women.
Wow.
Yeah, alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
In Dubai, what we've done with AI is, we know that the technology has been there for a while, and it's not necessarily that technology per se, it's a tool at the end of the day. But we wanted to know how this will affect our people life, especially a city like Dubai, who has almost 200 nationalities coming from different background, ethnicities, and you name it. Some of them are visitors, some of them are residents, some of them see it as their second home. So we wanted to know how such technology, futuristic technology, can have the ethical component that can cater for every need of our people. So what we've done in 2017, we launched the City AI Lab, wherein we invited specialists from government entities, but also from private sector, and to select number of use cases. We started with actually hundreds of use cases, and we came down to know exactly which one can be executed, because AI is not the solution for everything. Sometimes we think that AI is the solution, but when you come in ground, it might be a very simple solution that technology doesn't need to do anything with it. It's a change of policy or a regulation. During the last 3 years, hundreds of, as I said, possible use of cases, a number of workshops being done, and all of them came into conclusion that we need to work around policies, security, around, as I said, ethical uses of these solutions. And also personnel, whoever will work in developing these solutions. AI is nice to have, but who will work in these solutions? So having all of these in mind, alhamdulillah, we've launched the first, I would say, guidelines and principles for the ethical AI implementation based on Dubai values and our resident and citizens' needs. And it was, at the end of the day, also we need to make it smart enough that people can know how to use it. So it's not only for the government entities. For government entities, it is compulsory. Any solution that will implement an AI should take it through that toolkit. But also we made it available for any company, international, to download that toolkit, which is self-explanatory, to check if their AI implementation is ethical enough for their solution. And I will give you one example. We have the Authority for Islamic Affairs, and they wanted to do the first smart mufti, the guy who will say if this is halal or haram, if you can do these things according to Islamic principles. And they didn't thought about ethics when they designed the solutions. They just dumped the data and that solution with the certain algorithms. And the result was disaster, because every time you ask a question, the solutions start to learn and learn. Okay, what will happen if I come from a different background of Islamic principles? And you know, like in Islam, there are different schools. Then that solution was really like, I would say it's a dumb solution, because it didn't cater for the needs of the people. It's just so a one school that the designer designed that solution. And you can also like take that example across all the other examples if you design it only from one perspective. So talking about AI, yeah, I've been there for a long time now, but every city need to think about the ethical use of such solutions and what are our values in our cities and people needs, that these ethical principles will solve, will give us solutions in our lives.
Sure. Thank you so much. I fully agree. Unless we add layers of ethics to it, AI probably will lead to not intelligent but dumb solutions, which really can't be used. So thanks for highlighting that. I think time to invite some audience questions. Ma'am, I'll start from there and then come over to you. Please.
One question to Anwar. The effects which he has implemented in Pennsylvania. Was there any other case studies which you can suggest?
Yes, we have multiple examples actually from all over the world. We've implemented also in Mumbai, in India, a platform for running the distribution and of basically it's called coronavirus emergency response. So how do you manage the resources available in the city to be able to cater to the pandemic situation? How do you consolidate data that's coming from multiple hospitals, coming from multiple field officers, multiple test centers about the needs, the available protective equipment, the available ventilators and so on, to cater for the people that need them the most? that was the requirement for the city to respond. And our ability was to help the city with doing that, using technology and using data. So that's another example. We have other examples in other parts of the world where we use traffic cameras to provide more safety. Instead of reinstalling cameras or changing the cameras, we use video analytics with the existing cameras to be able to monitor and drive better. So there are many examples where we are accountable for the outcome the customer is looking for rather than just the technology.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, my question to the panelists, especially I'm coming from India and from Indian perspective, while we develop the smart cities at one level, making them globalized, inviting investments and making them more technology savvy, but there's also another set of the population that keeps coming in. As Mr. Kunal said in his presentation that today India has 35% of the population as urban population. But there's also another view that, there's a vision that, the urban population is going to increase. So that means there's another set of population from the rural areas migrating to the urban areas. So how do we cater to the learning needs of these people? Like, you use the best of the technology, you put the best of the roads, best of the infrastructure. But we face a practical problem in India when you're driving on the roads because people don't know these technologies at all. Even to use a parking lot to press it and then go also, I have seen people struggling and then you have to put in more people to make them use this. So what kind of learning, because especially this question I could have asked the government, like what kind of a learning platforms you people are creating? So I'm sure cities like Dubai would also have faced these because you have not just all the educated, but the worker category also, the labor category also comes in. So how these things have been worked at? Because this becomes a crux of however greatest technology used, but if you have to put another person to make you use the parking lot or use the toll gate, so then it becomes like a very redundant technology.
Would you like to answer that? Yeah.
An answer for especially the parking solution, because this was like one of the major things that we face here in Dubai. We do have the solution of like putting coins in the machine. But then with the advancement of technologies, then we have the SMS, then we have the application from Road and Transport Authority that from your app while going to your meeting, you can pay for your tickets. And you still see people, not people who are not educated, with their suits, two smart mobiles in their hand, running here and there searching for coins. And in the machine itself, it's written with a bold font. You can use SMS or this solution by downloading the QR, like there's a QR to download an application. So again, it is unless people go through that difficult situation, they will never learn. We don't read, whether we are educated or not educated. We
make the technology inclusive for the citizen. So how we create this awareness to the citizen use of this technology becomes the crux of
it's time. It's time. Pushing more awareness solution, whether it be at school. Today in Dubai, we've been talking about sustainability and the environment for a long time. My generation, we don't think about environmental things when we plan and think. Our kids today, even in small things at home, the first thing they think about is the environment and how to save environment.
Yeah.
So it's through education, through schools and through curriculums, people will learn, but it's need time.
Thank you. Ashish, you want to add something?
Yeah, I'll just add on that. So on a lighter side, if a person is standing and guiding people, it's an employment. To coming back to the point, we can take horse to the water. We can't feed them. But in India, for farmers, we do have reach out of technology and solutions and all assistance on SMS. Unfortunately, in smart cities, some of these modes are not being used, and that's the direction which is being worked on. So how do we reach out maximum is the only way we can do. balance educating them, as she rightly said, beyond a point is not possible. We can only make technology available to them at multiple modes, multiple places. That's it. As simple as possible.
Easy to use. You know, I don't want to add a lot on this, but you know, there are a few things you need to also look in. You know, the beauty of data orchestration, making it easy, so that government does not need multi-channels to reach out to people. They can have one channel. They can invest on that through the channel. They can then pass on whatever you are saying. Smart city is not a journey you start today and it ends tomorrow. No, it's a journey. Every day you evolve, every day you learn. This pandemic has taught us a lot more than what we initially actually thought of or prepared ourselves for. So I would say this is where governments and authorities and stakeholders, unification of certain data, or I will not say make a big pool of data, but a sector base or a vertical base or something like that, so that you can reach out to your stakeholders easily, be it the residents or the operations, right? When the need arises. So this is where it's important. So technology should serve the purpose of not only giving operational insights, but also allowing you to reach the people who you want to reach out to. Thank you.
Technology should not be a burden. We always think that this technology will solve an issue, but in case if people they don't know it or they don't know how to operate it, this is a burden in front of us. And I remember His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid gave us an example. He said, when we used to have a simple TV, we walked to the TV and we changed the channel. Then you bought me a new TV with a smart TV with the one control device. And now I have a TV with six control devices, one for the satellite, one for the cable TV, one for the sound, and it's make it so difficult for me that I don't watch TV anymore. So instead of complicating people's life, just make it simple.
Yeah.
If they don't know how to use that technology, maybe a simple guy just to explain the process. It's not always the technology. Maybe the process is difficult. Just simplify it for them.
Thank you. I'll just add one last thought to it, ma'am. My understanding is if I need something, irrespective of my education level, I'll go and learn that. So we have seen that in mobile, the way everyone, right from a rickshaw puller to a auto rickshaw wala to a cabbie uses mobile. I don't know how to use Paytm, I don't use Google Money, but my neighborhood person who irons the clothes uses that because he knows if he doesn't, he'll lose a customer. So people find a way to learn something which they need. You don't have to teach it to them. So thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for being such a
Just one addition.
Yes.
I think this is a very important topic to everybody. And just intersecting what Dr. Aisha said and what Ashish said, I mean, two comments. One is from our side as well, we try to interact a lot with education, with universities. I mean, when they are young and start educating them. And that's one thing. Another interesting use of technology, and Ashish was mentioning it, nowadays, mobile technology allows you that whenever you pass a certain area, you can get an SMS, like when you land into a new country. You can get an SMS. When you get to the city, you get an SMS, which is all technology, with all the important things to know. This is one example. The other example nowadays with pandemic, just when you need to travel, you should be used to check, okay, what is your checklist when you travel? And today, I mean, when I usually travel, I mean, now I'm going back to travel again, the must-know website is the Emirates website. It's the most updated website with all the COVID-related regulations. So if you establish the channel and population know where to look, is it an SMS or another place, then you start addressing that. That's an example of how to use technology.
Thanks, Andre. Thank you so much. I'm sorry I need to close it now. We are at the conclusion time. So thank you for all of you for being such a lovely audience. And thanks to my fellow panelists who braved the heat and the cold later and shared their interesting views. So thank you so much. Thanks a lot.